Good morning. Last night, our denomination held a video opportunity for people to lament. They called it, "How Long, O Lord?" I had planned to participate, and by 9 o'clock last night, I was so tired that I just got into bed and went to sleep. Maybe that was my own way of lamenting. But thinking about the idea of lamenting reminded me, back when I was working on my doctoral work, I took a course on the writings in the Old Testament, some of the writings that are less well known. And one of those is the book of Lamentations. And the way that the course worked was we would spend 4 or 5 hours a day with the professor in class each day over a 2-week period. And then we were to do a project during the late afternoons and late into the evenings and have that project finished by the end of the 2 weeks. And so we'd spend another 4 or 5 hours every day working on that. And the professor said that we could do a standard sort of research paper, but if we wanted to be creative, that was okay, and that we could do a work of art. We could write a book of poetry or a novel, I guess, or a play or even visual art. But she did warn us that if you do that, you need to know that you have to demonstrate to me that you've mastered the subject within your art. And if you don't do that, then you won't pass. But if you want to do art, the Bible uses art so much, you can use art as well. Well, one of my classmates and I got a wild hair, and we decided we would do a dramatic presentation of the book of Lamentations. Can you believe that? A dramatic presentation of the book of Lamentations. I mean, it is not the feel-good book in the Bible. And we did, and let me tell you, it was a painful thing that we did, because Lamentations is a terribly painful book. It begins, "How lonely sits the city that was once full of people. How like a widow she has become, she that was great among the nations," and it really goes downhill from there. But it's a book where the author is just pouring out his heart to God and asking those hard questions. Why, God? How long, God? Are you doing this to me, God? I don't understand, God. I'm hurting, God. All of these questions just being poured out, and all of this pain just being poured out. Well, when we finished the production, and what we did was we practiced it every night. We wrote it up and then practiced it. And they have at Columbia Theological Seminary a little stage area, a little theater kind of room. And that was our stage. That was where we did it. And we performed this for the class, one of the last days of class. And when it was over, everybody was just kind of quiet. We first thought maybe we had really bombed, but basically it is just such a painful book. And we had apparently done such a good job of portraying that people just couldn't speak. And finally the professor said, "Well, what am I supposed to say? You clearly have mastered this topic, and you've clearly presented to us the book of Lamentations." Part of the reason I want to tell you that is I want you to know I'm thankful first that the Cumberland Presbyterians are allowing us the opportunity to lament. We need to be able to lament. But I also want to remind you about something that's kind of interesting about the book of Lamentations. It is a terribly painful book, and I actually almost would not encourage you to read it right now. But after 2 chapters of just so much pain and agony being poured out, we come to the 3rd chapter, and right in the middle of the 3rd chapter, which is right in the middle of the book, it's a 5-chapter book, so right in the middle chapter, we get this verse: "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." That wonderful hymn that so many of us know, "Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning, new mercies I see." Would you believe that comes from the book of Lamentations? And just a few verses later it says, "You came near when I called on you. You said to me, do not fear." And that too comes from this book of Lamentations. And so right in the middle of all of that pain, I even want to say, because the person who is lamenting is willing to pour out all of that pain and all of those questions and all of that grief to God, they receive this message of hope, this message of assurance that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, that morning by morning new mercies we receive, that great is God's faithfulness, and that right in the middle of all of the darkness, we can hear God say, "Do not fear." Now, it's interesting and I think very wise of the author to continue. In the next 2 chapters are more chapters of pain and grief and outpouring of all of these questions and laments. And for me, what that suggests is that we are going to go back and forth between lament and feeling God's comfort, maybe between being afraid or full of grief or full of questions, and then receiving some comfort from God. But we go back into that. And what the book of Lamentations is telling us is that's okay. Pour out to God whatever you need and see if God does not respond to you with mercies by mercies each morning. See if you do not receive the steadfast love of God. But if you don't, keep pouring out that grief or that pain or that agony or those questions, and know that God eventually will respond, for the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. And the Lord will say to us sooner or later, do not fear. Another great way we can do that, particularly in a time where it feels like that the city is lonely and that the city that was once teeming with people is now empty, is to call out to friends for help. And so if you're feeling lonely or scared or worried, give me a call, give a friend a call. Let's all recognize that we're in this together. We can lament together, but we also, through each other, can experience the mercy of God. Stay safe and know that when we call out, God draws near. And God says to us, do not be afraid. Amen.